Welcome back to the Band Guide, where we use GarageBand to create professional sounding music. I'm your band guy, Colin, and today we are recording guitar in our little video series, The Ultimate GarageBand Beginner's Guide. This video series is walking through everything you need to know from the first time you open up GarageBand to your exporting out your finished mixed and mastered song. And we're actually recording, mixing, and mastering a song throughout the series, which is why I have a guitar on today, because we're going to be recording some guitar. I hope you're ready to watch me embarrass myself. I'm a mediocre guitarist at best, but I can teach you a lot for sure. I've been recording guitar for years. I'm primarily a drummer though, so give me some grace. Okay, getting into today's video, we're going to focus on how to get a great recording with your guitar. There's really three parts to it, three steps to getting a great recording on your guitar, and we're going to go through those today. But before we get into today's video, I want to give you something. In addition to this video series, I've also put together the Ultimate GarageBand Guide. This is a downloadable guide that walks through recording, mixing, mastering. It has all the shortcuts, gear recommendations. It's really the Ultimate GarageBand Guide, and it's completely free from link in the description below, so be sure to grab it. But let's go and get into today's video where we're recording electric guitar. Now, as I mentioned, there's really three parts to getting a great electric guitar recording. The first part is recording at the right volume. Now, we're not going to go in depth in that in this video because literally in yesterday's video, we went in depth in it while recording bass, and it's the exact same principles when recording electric guitar. But just quickly, let me show you what this looks like in this session here. So this is using a free plugin by TB Pro Audio called MV Meter 2, and I've just set it here to peak, and that allows me to see how loud my guitar is actually coming into GarageBand. Unfortunately, GarageBand in and of itself doesn't give you a super obvious way to see how loud your guitar is. So with this, I can see that I'm not actually peaking. When I hit 0, I am peaking. And you should just play around the actual part that you're going to be playing a little bit and see, can you get it to peak? Right there, I did get it to peak. So maybe I actually need to go back to my preamp here and just turn the interface down just a little bit. So that's the skinny thick of it, but there is a more in-depth description of it that you can check out in yesterday's video on recording bass guitar. I'll link to that above here. I highly recommend you watch the full process because there's a little bit more to it than what I just showed right now. Okay, so recording at the right volume, that is part one. Part two is to get a great tone. Now, getting a great tone comes down to a few different things, especially with guitar, because we're going to have likely multiple guitar layers in our song. So you want to be thinking about this from both the guitar standpoint. If you have multiple guitars, sometimes varying out guitars can be helpful, but also the actual amp standpoint. So I've done an entire video on the GarageBand Amp Designer in this video series as well. So if you haven't already seen that, I'll link to that above here, where I go through a process to get a great tone with your GarageBand amps. These amps are super powerful, and you can definitely get a tone that you're going to be happy with these amps. But my first tip with these amps when it comes to getting a great tone across your entire song is to vary the tone between your guitar parts. So this is the tone I have for one guitar, and then if I go down to this guitar, I have a very different tone over here on this guitar. So if we flip back and forth between these, they're not massively different, but between the head changing out and then the microphone changing out, we have a pretty different sound. And I can actually play just a little bit here for you so you can hear. This is the first amp. It's off in one ear. And then if I go up to the second amp, this one's a little bit more distorted compared to, right? So I'm going for two different tones here. I want them to complement each other, but I want there to be some variation. And you can take this a step further. If you have a different guitar, you can also change out the guitar as well. You don't need to go crazy with this, but thinking about this and trying to find complementary tones that work together in your song, but add some variation and separation will give you a bigger, wider sound in your mixes. So I highly recommend you think about varying the tone between your amps. And you can do that just by changing out the amp head, changing out the microphone, playing around the positioning a little bit. You can also do it on your guitar by changing your pickup pattern or the tone knob down there. So play around with different parts of the tone. And then the last way that you can play around with tone is in how you actually play the guitar. So for example, if I play one guitar part here, and then I play another guitar part just with power chords, this D sounds very different than that D, right? So playing around with that and having a little bit of variation in how you record your song is going to give you a little variation in your tone as well. And so that's actually what we're going to be doing in this video today. I've already recorded one guitar part that has these fuller, higher chords, right? And then I'm playing more just power chords in what we're going to be recording today. And so thinking about the tone across the different amps, across the actual guitar itself, and then across how you're playing your part is going to help you get a bigger, fuller tone throughout your guitar sound in your song. So that is step 2 or part 2 of getting a great guitar recording. That's getting the tone right. And then the third part is getting a great recording. And going into that, that really means that you have to be locked in on your timing. You need to be consistent both in your individual guitar parts, but then across your different guitar parts throughout your song. So for example, anytime I'm recording guitar, I'm paying a lot of attention to how my multiple guitars are playing off each other, that they're doing the same thing at the same time when they should be, and that they're doing slightly different things at different times when they should be. So you want to be looking for places for variation and then trying to lock in as close as you possibly can. That has to do with the actual take itself, like how long you're holding a chord, which we're going to look at here in a second when we start recording. And so if I have one side that does just a quick stab and one side that is held out a little bit longer, if you have a lot of weird, slight variations in your song like that, it can start to feel uneven and like it isn't a super tight performance. And so by being very intentional with how you're recording and paying attention to what you're doing on your different guitar layers as you're stacking them in, you can get a much more consistent final product that's going to sound way more professional. The pros pay a lot of attention to these little details. This is not something that they're haphazard about. So paying attention to the actual performance is really, really important. And then the final thing I'll say before we start recording here is that you really, really, really need to be paying attention to your tuning. This is something I've heard on a lot of mixes that people send me, and it's a great sounding mix, and they maybe even dialed in their performances pretty well, but maybe a little loose in their timing. But then what's really holding them back is that they're just a little bit out of tune on their guitars. And guitars are tricky because there's a lot of different ways that you can be out of tune. Like, there's some little bit of dissonance right there. So I got to find that, right? So this tuner up here in GarageBand is your best friend. You should absolutely be pulling this up throughout and seeing, like, right, see that B is just a little bit flat? You got to be regularly checking this and making sure that you can get your guitar and keep your guitar in tune throughout your recording. Now, so that B was a little bit flat. Let's see if this sounds better now. Yeah, see, so you got to pay attention to these things, and you got to keep coming back throughout. If you record for too long without checking your tuning, then you might be slowly drifting out of tune. This guitar, that B string is constantly going out of tune. Let me know in the comments below if you can relate to that. Drives me crazy. But I love this guitar. Otherwise, I've had this thing for like, oh God, more than 15 years. Wow, that's crazy. Love this guitar. So you need to pay attention to your tuning. Stay on top of it. And then there's actually 3 ways I recommend you check your tuning. So check it with the tuner. And then also check it, your normal. And then also harmonics. Now, as I mentioned at the top of this video, I'm not a guitarist. But if you hear like a little bit of warble, like let me put this slightly out of tune. You hear those kind of warble? That's not a word, warble, but you get the point. That is showing me that one of those is out of tune from the other one. And being in tune relative across your strings is super important. Right, okay. So I'm checking it both places here. There we go. All 3 places. And then there's actually one other way that I would check it, and that's like if you know you're going to be playing, like, for example, I never actually played this B string in this song on its own, but I am playing it in a D. So I need to make sure that this is going to be right when I'm hitting that D. Actually, more than just as a standalone B. So I'm actually going to bring down just a hair. So there's a few different ways that you should be checking your tuning just to be sure that nothing's a little bit off as you're going throughout your recording. Okay, let's go and get in and actually start recording some guitar in this song. As I said, I already have one guitar part done, and I also had a guitar part that I had a buddy of mine record because I can't play the guitar stuff at all. If it's a lick, I can't do it. I can do some chords. As I said, get ready to watch me embarrass myself. Hopefully not. Let's have some fun with this. We're going to turn on the metronome. I strongly recommend you have the metronome on, even if you have drums in your song. I have my guitar up a little bit, and let's go ahead and get into recording. Okay, so I messed up a couple little things there. And I definitely messed up right at the end. If you watch me do the bass video, I also messed up there. Apparently that's just a place I'm going to mess up. So there's a few ways that we can fix things, but mostly we're just going to be punching in. Now, sometimes you want to come in actually a little bit before you're actually going to start playing. So if you need to be playing on that D, I might come in on the A so that when I get up to the D, I can kind of finagle the edit there to make it all work. Sometimes you can actually come in like right on the part that you're playing. Just depends on how tight you were playing up until that part. So playing around with both approaches might be helpful for you. In this case, I am going to come in on the F, which is earlier than I need to, just so that I can make sure I get my edits right. So let's go ahead and just record that last little bit. A bit sloppy, but let's go ahead and listen to that. Yeah, okay, so I'm just a little bit late. We can see, so visually, these are things to start checking as you're going through. I can see visually I'm a little bit late on this note here. I'm fine on this note. I come in the right place on this note, but I kind of miss and come in a little bit too late and I'm playing catch up over here. So you can see these notes are getting a little bit wonky right there. So paying attention to your timing in this way can be really helpful because that's educational to me. Now I know, okay, I'm pretty good here. I need to get up to that D a little bit faster. And then when I go into this, I need to be really intentional my timing and try to be as tight in my timing there as I can be. Okay, so let's just redo that one more time and let's see if we can get it. If it's more than this one time, then I'm just gonna do it off camera. Okay, let's see, that might have been it. Definitely better than the time before. Cool, okay, so this is a lot closer, and I think with a little bit of editing, I might be able to make this work. So if you watch the video on bass, I used flex time when I was recording bass to edit little bits. I'm not going to do that. I don't like to do that on electric guitar. I think it often sounds a little bit wonky. And so what I prefer to do on electric guitar, I'm going to turn this off so it's silent, is just come in here and do a little trim. So Command T, that will split it, and then just slide it back to where it should be. And that is a lot closer timing wise. So it's just a little bit late. It gets a little bit too early right there, but we can, so we'll split the difference just a little bit. And let's listen to this now. And by the way, I heard as I was playing that I was a little bit off. You don't just want to rely on just your eyes. You want to use a combination of like your eyes and your ears as you're doing this. Let's listen to this here. Cool. Do I want to slide down on that last note? I think so. Okay, I'm just going to punch in on just that last little bit just so I can do a slide down. All right, here we go. All right, I got to slide down faster. One more time on that. All right, we're going to undo this. We're going to turn on the count-in function, which is going to allow me to have 2 more bars or 1 bar, depending on what you've set up here under record. I just have 1 bar, so that's fine. So that just gives me 1 more bar before it will start recording. Cool. Okay. So all I actually need from this is that last note. So we're just going to pull this up. Yeah, much better. Okay. Cool. Okay, so it's a little bit Frankenstein together. Part of this is because I'm just a mediocre guitarist. Part of this is the way I would record anybody. This is dialing these in and getting these parts like really, really figured out and aligned is really, really important. And so there's 2 other areas that I want you to pay attention to. One is like super rhythmic sections. So for example here, the palm mute section right here. Not my best performance. Okay, so if I hit B to close the smart control window, I can see this a little bit better. It's a little bit bigger. And I can see here, again, visually, and I could hear it already, that I was rushing, I was a little bit behind, or I would look at this, I was on time, and then I start to rush a little bit around here. You can see that I should be coming in right on that note right there, and I'm coming in just a little bit late. So what I would do to fix this is, one, I'm going to re-record this because I want it to be a little bit tighter, but I'll do that off camera. But the other thing I can do, I've already done on this second track here, and you can see here, I just shifted just a little bit. This performance was overall pretty tight. There was just one little area where I started to fall behind, and then I started to rush it just a little bit as I was catching up, and then I got pretty back in the groove. And so this one here is pretty locked in compared to this one. And if we listen to them together here, there's almost like a flam thing going on between the two, where it's like, right? So another tip as I'm doing this right here, I often will solo little things against each other and see that I'm performing them close enough to each other to know that I have a good enough take and that I'm similar. And I might learn like, oh, I'm actually, like for example, right here in the start of this, I need to get that da, 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 a little bit tighter on this guitar. That da, 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 da. And I can see it, but I can also hear it better in solo than I might be able to when I'm listening to everything together. I'll also sometimes just solo just the guitar and the drums. Or with the bass maybe, or just the guitar and the bass. So checking that and paying attention to the timing across different sources is a great way to know that you're hearing everything and that you know that you're going to be in time with everything else that's going on in the song. And then the final thing that I recommend that you check is transitions. So you want to make sure that you're really, really tight on your transitions and timing. So for example, like here, I actually kind of nailed this, not to brag, but I'm slightly late. Look at that. I was right after I bragged. I'm humbled. You want to make sure that you come in right on the right moment. And then you want to make sure you nail the transition. So as I mentioned, I was a little bit like too sustained on transitioning into this palm mute. That's just a little sloppy sounding. And then I'm also, I think I full missed this first chord. Like that's just a sloppy transitioning. So really dialing in those transitions can really help out. So for example, this will be the last thing we do here. That is just a loose transition. So if I just get that transition better. Okay, so let's do that together real quick. turn on input monitoring. We're actually going to go back to the beginning so I know where I am in this. All right, let's listen to that. So the timing's still a little bit off, but that actual transition is way better than this. Right? Like I just full stop playing on one, came in a little bit late. So I'll get the timing a little bit tighter on that, but just to give you an idea of what you're paying attention to, and I can easily just punch that in and then just slide the regions around so that it all fits and works together with the new part that I just added. Okay, so the 3 steps to getting a great guitar recording is recording at the right volume, getting the right tone, and with that you want to be thinking about the tone on your guitar, the tone on how you're playing it, and the tone on your amps and different amps throughout your session, and then getting a great recording that's in time, it's really consistent, and it's in time and consistent against all the different parts in the song, and finally that it's really, really in tune. You want to be paying attention to how in tune you are, because if you're way off tune, like you're just shooting yourself in the foot. Okay, be sure to grab the Ultimate GarageBand Guide from the link in the description below. It's completely free. It's really going to help you out. Before you go, I want to hear from you. Do you have any tips for recording guitar? I'm always looking for ways to improve anything that I'm working on. So let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. If this video is helpful, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll be back tomorrow with a video on how to record acoustic guitar in GarageBand.
One thing at a time.